On today's episode of Big Sky Now, we discuss the dramatic win Montana had on Saturday against North Dakota. We also discuss Montana State's first win of the season and other games from Week 3. Then we dive into last week of non-conference games for the Big Sky teams and wrap up the show with our weekly picks. Before we start, I just want to give a special thank you to M&C Tires for sponsoring this podcast. Let's get to it. All right, welcome back, everyone, to our weekly episode of Big Sky Now. My name is Luke Schmidt, and on my panel today, I have the one and only Daily Interlake sports editor Fritz Neighbor, joined with Coeur d'Alene sports editor Mark Nelke and Columbia Basin Herald sports reporter Mike Maynard. Before we jump into the exciting Week 3 recap, I just want to shout out some previous Big Sky players making their mark on the NFL stage. We saw on Sunday Eastern Washington legend Cooper Kupp bounce back with a 90-yard performance on 7 catches. Rashid Shaheed from Weber State had a touchdown for the Saints with 52 yards receiving. Sacramento State's own Marty Mapu, hopefully I said that correctly, I was worried before the show, had a game-changing interception for the New England Patriots in their defeat over the Dolphins. In their victory over the Dolphins. Mapu was the Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year in 2022. And finally, Broncos captain Alex Singleton had 8 total tackles from the University of Montana State as they were defeated by the Colts. And yes, as a Broncos fan, that game still stings me 24 hours later. All right, well, what a college week we had for Week 3. We witnessed this past Saturday a great game. I'm going to let Fritz already just jump right in because this is what everyone was watching. Montana won an absolute thriller over North Dakota. Fritz, feel free to go as deep as you want on that one and any other games you found interesting.
Well, yeah, I was there for that one. And about halfway through or pretty early in the third quarter, I thought, if the Grizz pull this one out, it's going to be like when they had over Eastern Washington back in the day. I was thinking, I put it on Twitter as 2005. It was actually 2007. Eastern came in and gained almost 600 yards, scored 20 straight points, had the game in hand, kicked the field goal to lead with a little over 2 minutes left to lead 23-21. And then the Grizz marched down and got a field goal with 26 seconds left and won 24-23, just like Saturday's score. They were outgained 2-1 that day against Eastern. Funny part about that was I think there's still a lot of people think that 2007 Grizz team was the best one they ever put together under Bobby Hauck. I don't, because they had trouble scoring. This past Saturday they got outgained again, and UND they missed their first PAT, and then they bounced another PAT off an upright, and then they decided not to go for a couple 3-pointers that might have made the difference later in the game. There was some excellent play down the stretch from Kiali Ayat. I think you saw you show up in the first half, and then in the fourth quarter, he kind of found his stride, and they made some good route adjustments. He threw 153 yards or 147 yards in the final quarter. And, the tight end they picked up from UC Davis, Josh Gale, was a good pickup, obviously. Brooks Davis is a good recruit. He's a redshirt freshman who looks like he's very talented. Got the game-winning TD or the game-tying TD. And then Ty Morrison, who's your special teams player of the week for the Big Sky, nailed the PAT. I think he's only missed one in his short 2-year career with the Grizz. So it all came together at the end. Good programs, sometimes still games from other good programs. I think that's what happened Saturday. I think Bobby kind of admitted as much. He said, and I'm paraphrasing now, I don't have the direct quote, but he just said, we maybe didn't deserve to win that game, but the fact that we did bodes well for the rest of the season. So a lot of good plays. I was really impressed by North Dakota. I liked the quarterback. I liked some of the running backs, and they'll be a force. I think they'll make the playoffs, the Fighting Hawks.
Yeah, I agree with you, Fritz. I think North Dakota really showed, especially in the first half, that they're going to be a legit team this season. And I think, as you said, Montana's young, and they may not deserve to win that game, but they found a way, so it was impressive. Mark, you're my Idaho guy. Tell us about Idaho defending the Kibbe Dome against Utah Tech, and Idaho State did have a bye this week, so we'll let you off the hook for the Bengals.
I was going to say Idaho State didn't lose this week, which is an improvement over the last 3 weeks. So hopefully the bye did them good and they got healed up and get their minds right, stuff like that. They're obviously better than a 0-3 team, but I think it was Ditka or somebody said you are what your record says you are, or maybe Parcells or whatever. But so anyway, Vandals 20, Utah Tech 6. I mean, that sounds about as boring as maybe it was, but these Vandals are probably not, they're not your Jason Eck Vandals that are going to trick plays and go for it a lot and stuff. They just hammer the ball down your throat and they play defense and they win that way. They complete enough passes when they need to win. I mean, they held Utah Tech, which had scored, I think, 31 or something, 31 and 24 the first 2 weeks against a couple other Big Sky teams, held them out of the end zone. Their only points were on a couple of 50-plus yard field goals, and the one, I don't know if you were watching it all, but it barely cleared the upright. It almost hit the one referee in the head that was under the goalpost, and maybe he kind of got confused or something because he kind of looked at the other guy, and they both looked at each other and they waved it no good, and they had to go to replay to realize that it did cross the upright, and it was inside the upright and did get over the crossbar. But it just seemed kind of weird. The ball almost hit him, and so you'd have thought, but maybe just kind of lost it there. But anyway, ran the ball for almost 300 yards. Art Williams with 144, including a 68-yarder. Joshua Wood, the dual threat quarterback. You can't just call him Joshua Wood, the Idaho quarterback. He's the Idaho dual threat quarterback. So 85 yards rushing, 119 passing. Someone asked him in the presser up later, how come, if he's concerned because he didn't throw for that many yards. And Thomas Ford Jr. said something, well, when you run for almost 300, you don't really have to throw the ball too much. So they had the game controlled on the grounds, and maybe it isn't as flashy as throwing to Hayden Hatton and Jermaine Jackson and stuff, but they get the job done. They run the ball, they play defense, and a kid that I don't think anybody had ever heard of before named Ryan Jezioro had 5 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown, and he's become when they do throw it, he's become Wood's go-to guy. He's got 14 catches for 159 and 2 TDs. He's a redshirt freshman from Peoria, Arizona. So that's the Vandals got an interesting game this week, which we'll talk about later. And then the other thing I wanted to throw out there was former Idaho coach Jason Eck takes New Mexico into the Rose Bowl, and not only does he beat UCLA, then he cost the UCLA coach his job. So it's like,
you got a guy fired.
Yeah, there was some joking on the internet after the game that the UCLA brass was gonna go out there and fire their coach right after the handshake and hire Eck, and so obviously that's not going to happen anytime soon. But it's kind of funny to see Eck go in there and control it. He did it the same way he did it up here, just kind of with nice ground game defense, and every now and then he throw in some trickery and stuff like that. But it was kind of fun to watch the New Mexico Lobo Vandals go down there with Eck and beat UCLA in the Rose Bowl.
Thanks for the recap on the Vandals, Mark. Mike, I wanted to ask you if there was an update on Eastern's quarterback, Jared Taylor, if you knew how serious that injury was or anything that else caught your eye on Saturday in the Big Sky.
Yeah, I did reach out to the coach and just haven't had a response back. Not too sure what the extent of the injury is or what the current status of it is. I think maybe as soon as I know, maybe I can find a way to update that somehow. But yeah, not too sure what the current state of that situation is. But I could definitely kind of go into that game against Northern Iowa. What a game. Did not expect it to be as close as it was. I remember checking the box score and I'm like, oh, Um, Definitely had a late push for a comeback. They were down 17-0, I believe, for at the start of the second half, and made a late push in that fourth quarter. Um, 14 points scored, and then almost had an opportunity to tie it with a field goal. And it looks like they had a missed field goal. Um, but regardless of the outcome, I think there is a win. I think that Eastern Washington's defense really showed a lot of promise. A lot of guys had big days. Big key turnovers. Um, I don't think Northern Iowa got any turnovers whatsoever, and Eastern Washington got two of them, an interception and a fumble. Some guys like Bryce Smith and Reed Sun had career days for tackles, um, things of that nature. So I think, looking ahead for these guys, leaning on that defense, there's a lot of promise there, getting a lot of good experiences, making big plays and whatnot. I think that'll help them in the long run. And then also Nate Bell, who's filling in for Jared Taylor, had a pretty good day on the run. Not too bad day throwing either. But that run, 14 carries for 99 yards, led the team that day. I think if they can find a way to really utilize the run game, maybe they can, squeak out a win next week.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. We'll talk about Eastern hopefully getting their first win. They are starting 0-3. Fritz, I'll go back to you. Was there any other games that caught your eye? I know there was some late games that were close, and maybe if you want to jump in on how Montana State looked versus San Diego.
Yeah, I didn't see a whole lot of Montana State, just a few highlights, but it looked like Lamson, the quarterback, really played well, and they were playing a non-scholarship team. They finally got a little bit of a reprieve on their schedule, which was awfully tough to start the season. So now they're 1-2, and they're still ranked. They're ranked ahead of the Griz. I think they're number 4 in the Stats Perform poll today. And they'll turn around and play Mercyhurst next week, which is a team they thumped pretty good a year ago at home. The big game besides the Griz game, I thought, was NEU taking down Southern Utah with 29 seconds left. They get a touchdown to go up 50-49. They wind up winning 52-49. They take on the 2-pointer. Southern Utah, future Big Sky re-entry, keeps getting everybody good games, not quite getting there. And NEU, not a signature win. Maybe that's coming this week. But Pennington, their quarterback, is the conference player of the week for good reason. So those are the two things that stuck out for me.
Yeah, and last question I'll ask you, Fritz. You can answer this one quickly, if you don't want to dive too deep. But in the Big Sky, what team to you looks like the biggest offensive threat so far?
Well, I kind of tend to stick with the Bobcats. I think, they started the season with, as Coach Vegan said, 6 O-linemen that could start, and they lost one right away. So they're starting the other 5, and I think that group will get better. And I think you saw them take a jump last week. Lamson really ran the ball well and threw it pretty well too, I thought. I think what you saw out of Ayat was encouraging the latter half of the game. I think he's found a go-to guy in Brooks Davis. And then NEU, Ty Pennington's basically the one quarterback that was back in the Big Sky that started a bunch of games last year. Ayat got 6 starts in, but he was in and out of the lineup. Pennington was a consistent performer a year ago, and I think he's been the same this year. And so those are the 3, and I think those 3 will be good playoff teams. And then, you got to figure UC Davis is in there somewhere, despite losing that tight end, who the Griz for sure glad they have. They still keep turning up yards and points.
Yeah, I'm with you, Fritz. I was going to say those exact 3 teams as well. Montana State, and then Pennington for Northern Arizona are definitely looking dangerous. Mark, let's flip the question for you on the defensive side of the ball. What Big Sky team do you think looks best?
Without diving too much, I would say Idaho looks pretty good so far. They slowed down WSU. They kind of maybe didn't take St. Thomas very seriously, but they, like I said, they took a Utah Tech team that scored 31 and 24 points and held them to 2 field goals. So just at first glance, I would say the Vandals so far.
Yeah, especially with that week 1 game we watched. Hard to argue, giving up 3 rushing yards. So definitely understand that answer. To wrap up week 3, I just want to say, if you watched the interview I had with Northern Colorado, I was given the privilege to interview with their quarterback, Peter Costelli. Unfortunately, I do have some news on Costelli. He's going to be out the remainder of the season for the Bears after re-injuring the same knee he hurt last season. So it'll be interesting to see if they get a red shirt on this year, but he already is a redshirt junior. So we'll see what happens with Costelli. Definitely wishing him the best recovery. And if you want to catch that interview, it is on this channel below. But also just mention Weber State. They escaped McNeese. I did pick Nick McNeese to win in my pick last week, so I was wrong about that. Jackson Gilkey, 332 yards of offense, 2 touchdowns. And so just wanted to give Weber State a shout out on their win. That was a high-scoring one as well. But let's jump to next week, week 4. It's going to be the last week before we start conference play, where picks will be a little bit harder to pick, I would say. John usually is the one that, when we get to the pick section, he's confident now, but once we get conference play, it's going to be some surprises. I'm interested in a few games, especially Northern Arizona hosting Incarnate Ward. I think that's going to be my game of the week. Montana and Montana State don't have too hard of matchups this week, taking on Indiana State and Mercyhurst. But who knows? That's the best part about the Big Sky. Every given week, a team could not show up, but they are at home, so I find that encouraging for them. I'm also going to try and tune into the Idaho and San Jose State game, as well with the UC Davis taking on Southern Utah. I think that one should be intriguing as well. But let's jump to you, Fritz. First, want to ask you if you expect Montana teams to win easily this week, and if there's any other games you thought that'll be interesting.
Well, I think it's important that neither team take the opponent lightly, but I think it's worth noting that 3 years ago, the Grizzlies went to Terre Haute, Indiana, and won pretty dominant fashion, 49-14. Indiana State has been in the 1-win, 2-win, 3-win range for a few years. They're playing a great conference, obviously, the Missouri Valley, which is NDSU and SDSU and South Dakota. They're coming off a 73-0 loss, the Sycamores are, to Indiana, where they gained 77 yards, 38 and 39. I can't remember who had the more yards, the passing game or the running game. I suppose it doesn't matter. They started a guy named Keegan Patterson, the quarterback, and he completed 8 passes for 13 yards. And then they went with a redshirt freshman for part of the game too. So, they'll go from 48,000 in Bloomington to 26,000 and change at Washington Grizzly Stadium. It might be louder than it was in Bloomington. It often is louder at Washington Grizzly Stadium than it is in a lot of FBS stadiums. And other than that, the only other guy that kind of stuck out is they got a hometown kid from Terre Haute named Alex Rose, who's a redshirt sophomore linebacker who forced a fumble. So I expect the Grizz will have an easier time this week than they did last week, when I think there's 5 minutes or so left, and ESPN ran a graphic that UND had a 95% chance of winning the game, and then things flipped on it. So I think it'll be easier for the Grizz this week, and I think it's a step down as well for the Bobcats. Mercyhurst came over to Bozeman last year and lost 52-19. It's a pretty small school from Erie, PA, 40,000 students. 4,000 students is also, they got some good kids, but not enough good kids to compete with the Bobcats for 60 minutes.
Yeah, I'm with you, Fritz. I think both teams should handle, but as we said, we'll never know. Well, let's jump over to Mark. Idaho and Idaho State, what are you thinking this week? And feel free if there's any other games you can hit on it, Mark.
Okay, we'll start with Idaho. The last few years, they already have wins over a couple of Mountain West teams in Wyoming and Nevada. So I think we got a good shot against San Jose State. It's kind of like Jason X said, in kind of against UCLA, he's talking about, smaller schools playing bigger schools. He said, well, they're better team. We'll play better teams than UCLA, and later on in the season. Which, boy, I mean, Boise State maybe, but I don't know about the other ones. But anyway, you kind of get the drift. He said it wasn't like we were playing Ohio State. So Idaho playing San Jose State. They've been good the last few years, and but they're definitely a team that a good FCS team like Idaho could beat. And we'll find out. Obviously, Idaho State plays Lincoln of California, and barring any that barring forgetting how to play football in the last 2 weeks, Idaho State should be able to finally get on the board with their first win. So. Other games I'm kind of looking at, maybe Southern Utah and UC Davis might be the game of the week. UC Davis 1-1 with an asterisk. Southern Utah playing well, but coming up short. So that would be probably the other game I'll kind of be tracking a little bit.
And Mike, I got to ask you a question I asked you last week. Will we see Eastern get its first win, or is there any other games that you're also interested in for this week?
Yeah. Well, I think not to get too far ahead of myself, but I think I will pick Eastern Washington to get their first win this week. It still feels like a bold prediction, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and call it. I feel good about how the defense played, and I think they can try to take any momentum they can and try to build off of that. Western Illinois, I mean, granted, their first 2 games were against Big Ten schools, but I think Eastern Washington has a chance. They'll be at home. I think plenty of things play to their advantage. So I think they can get their first win. The Southern Utah versus UC Davis matchup definitely intrigues me quite a bit. And then Idaho versus San Jose State. They played Washington State very close. And I think at that rate, they could probably give San Jose State quite the battle.
I agree with you. I think San Jose State as well is going to be a great game. Mark, I'll jump right back to you. Give me a game this week you think that could go differently before we get to conference play. Is there any maybe some Cinderella games you might see from a team that hasn't been playing well that could actually get a win over a better team?
Yeah, I don't know if there's maybe a Cinderella as much, but you circle back to the Idaho San Jose State, and people would say, okay, FBS will beat FCS because they're FBS. So I think I think that's there's a chance for a good FCS team in Idaho to beat a pretty good to okay FBS team in San Jose State. So I don't see any others that might be like surprises. I think the Southern Utah UC Davis could be a pick 'em. UC Davis might have the advantage being at home, but other than that, I don't see. The Montana schools should roll, and we'll see how the Leathernecks do against Eastern Washington. Like Mike said, they're 0-2 in the Big Ten, and we'll see how they do against Eastern. So,
yeah, fair enough, Mark. Fritz, I'll end this next week preview with you. Obviously, it's our last week before we start talking some conference games. Do you still consider Montana State as your favorite still, or is there another team creeping in?
Well, yeah, I think Montana State's a co-favorite. I think that Cat Griz game at the end of November is going to be pretty crucial, or could be pretty crucial. I like the way Idaho's playing. I just don't think there's much turnover. There's 5 teams ranked, or is it more? And they all look pretty good to me, with the possible exception of Sac State, which I think Sac State, they're coming off their first win, which was tough. They had to score 3 times in the fourth quarter to get some spacing last week. So I think Idaho, Montana State, Montana, those 3 are going to be at the top. NEU's in there, obviously, and I think the fact that Montana kind of had like a favorable schedule with 8 home games, it doesn't look quite as favorable now. I think a lot of teams are looking pretty salty in the Big Sky.
Yeah, thanks, Fritz. Just wanted to get your input on that before we get going to conference. But it's that time of the week we're going to give our picks. I'll just jump into mine really quick. Last week, I went 8 for 10 on my picks, bringing my total 26 correct out of 32. This week, I'm going to take both Montana teams to win at home. I'm actually going to take the upset. I'm going to go Idaho over San Jose State. Really like the defense of what I've been seeing for the Vandals. I like Northern Arizona to win at home over Incarnate Ward. I also think Idaho State will win as well. I'm going to pick Eastern to win its first game. So, Mike, that is something I'm going to hold you to. Let's see if that picks up. Even though I was wrong about the Bears last week, I did pick them to beat South Dakota. It was a great game. Unfortunately, they did not win, but I am going to take them again this week to beat Houston Christian. I'm going to go Stephen F. Austin to beat Cal Poly at home. I'm going to take the home team there. And I'll take a shot at Butler to beat Weber State. They are 2-1. So going to take Butler. And to finish it, I will take Sac State and UC Davis to win. Okay, and let's see here. Now we are with Fritz. Fritz, go ahead and give your picks, and then I'll let you know how you did last week.
Oh, okay. Holding out on me. All right. Well, I'll take the Griz over the Sycamores and the Bobcats over the Lakers of Mercyhurst. I'm going to take San Jose State. Once upon a time, the San Jose State Spartans with Jack Elway's coach just bombed the Stanford Cardinal and John Elway at quarterback in '81. And I've liked San Jose State a little bit ever since. So I'll take them. I'll take NEU over Incarnate Word. I'll take Idaho State over the Lincoln Oaklanders. I'm also going to pick Eastern to get that first win. I'll take Northern Colorado, even though they have questions at QB, over the Houston Christian Huskies, who last week lost to the Huskers, 59-7. I'll take Sam Vidlac and the SFA Lumberjacks over Cal Poly. I'll take Sac State over Central Arkansas, Weber over Butler, Davis over Southern Utah.
Thank you, Fritz. Guess I was leaving for a dramatic effect. You were perfect last week. So you are now 28 out of 32. And you were going to be tied with our next picker, Mark. He's also 28 of 32 with 8 correct games last week. So, Mark, let's hear what you got.
Okay, well, let's see, Indiana State at Montana. As the one coach said, Larry Bird ain't walking through that door. So I'm going to take Montana over Indiana State. Montana State over Mercyhurst, even though Mercyhurst gave vaunted Sac State future FBS power a good game for most of that game. I'm going to take the Vandals to win it at San Jose State. I'll take Northern Arizona over Incarnate Word, Idaho State over Lincoln. I'm going to go with Eastern to break through and get their first win over the Leathernecks. Well, let's go with Northern Colorado winning at Houston Christian. Stephen F. Austin over Cal Poly, Weber over Butler, Sac State over Central Arkansas, and UC Davis over Southern Utah.
Thank you, Mark. As you can see, John is not here today. Hopefully John feels better next week. But let's give his picks. John was perfect as well with Fritz last week. John, remarkable so far, 31 out of 32 correct. Only has one wrong game. I'll give his picks really quick. This week he's taken Montana. He's taken Montana State. San Jose State. He's going to take Northern Arizona over Incarnate Ward. He's going to take Idaho State. Eastern Washington will get its first win. He's also going to take Northern Colorado. He likes Stephen F. Austin to win. Weber State to win. Sac State. And UC Davis. And last but not least, Mike, you got 8 picks last week, correct? So you are tied with me at 26 out of 32. So we are tied for third. But go ahead.
All right. Yeah. Just like everybody else, I'll take all the Montana teams to win this weekend. I think I'm going to go with Northern Arizona. I'm going with Idaho for the upset over at San Jose State. Idaho State over Lincoln. Eastern Washington to get their first win. I'm going to go with Northern Colorado, Stephen F. Austin, Sac State, Weber State, and Southern Utah, actually. They've been playing a lot of these teams very, very close. I think they're going to finally get over the hump. I'm going to call it.
Yeah, I actually do. I like that Southern Utah pick, Mike. Well, that should do it here on this week of Big Sky Now. Please like, subscribe, or even comment your picks or any questions you have below. We will be back next week to talk some conference football. Can't wait to do that with you guys. Appreciate you joining me today. And we will catch you later, and have a great day.
M&C Tire in Kalispell has been locally owned since 1979. From urban avenues to untamed trails, M&C Tire will help you conquer any terrain. Unleash the power within your ride. Stop into M&C Tire at 1271 North Meridian Road in Kalispell or mnctire.com. M&C Tire, wherever you go, we've got you covered.